We do move on to the Salmon and Watersheds program from the state of Oregon, and we have Louise Soliday and Harry Hugesteger. Delighted to have you both here.
Thank you. We went where no one else had ever gone before, building an interagency multi-partner plan to recover salmon and water quality statewide. It didn't start that way. We were chasing a coho listing along Oregon's coast. They were our first canary in the coal mine. Then things got totally out of hand. Water quality problems all over the state, salmon listings proposed affecting 3/4 of the state. This was no longer about one critter, but about the health of Oregon's watersheds and the species that depend on them. But we were Oregonians who had risen to challenges and opportunities many times in the past to adopt strong land use programs, recycling programs, a bottle bill, the Oregon Health Plan, and many others. Because we value our quality of life and want to protect that quality of life for future generations to enjoy. Quite simply, it is who we are. We believe the Oregon Plan offers others a framework to address aquatic species and water quality problems in a holistic manner. Our work has been used by Washington and California to develop their salmon recovery plans as the entire West Coast works to restore precious fisheries. Governor Kitzhaber believes that federal laws to protect species and water quality only take us part of the way to recovery. He understands that the magnitude of this problem means asking all Oregonians to do their part. He also understands that we need to provide our citizens with support, technical, financial, educational, and otherwise, to engage them in daily decision-making that is beneficial to salmon and watershed health recovery. From the simplest choice of not leaving the water running while we brush our teeth, to a difficult one of removing dikes to restore floodplains and allow flooding to occur in them again, Oregonians are stepping up to the challenge. We placed ownership for watershed assessment and developing solutions in the hands of local folks in their watersheds through our 90 watershed councils. We are making connections between what we do in our homes and on our lands with the quality of habitat and the quality of our water. Local citizens feel empowered. They know what the goals are, but they get to choose the solutions that work for them. There is excitement in local communities across the state that will endure well into the future. I still remember my first Mackenzie Watershed Council project working side by side on the Mohawk River planting trees with loggers and fishers and farmers and environmentalists and agency personnel and residents and students. It will take a decade or two or more before we know whether we're making the right choices for salmon. But we are already starting to see improvements in water quality and habitat quality. Through our Restoration Project reporting program, we already know that 431 miles of stream have been reopened as a result of culvert replacements, and 1,470 roads have been improved to reduce soil erosion, and 422 miles of stream banks have been fenced in an effort to reestablish riparian areas. We're optimistic about the approach that we have chosen. We believe that over time, making the right choices will become second nature for Oregonians because we care about salmon and clean water, and because it is, after all, who we are.
All over Oregon, people are stepping forward to help save salmon. Hundreds of farmers and ranchers are giving up their pasture land along rivers and creeks to provide riparian habitat for fish. Thousands of citizens and watershed councils are talking to their neighbors about watershed restoration. They're putting up fences and planting trees. Over 50% of the habitat for salmon and steelhead in our state is on private land. The Oregon Plan, with its emphasis on voluntary contributions, is a unique way of bringing neighbors together, upstream and downstream, in every watershed in the state to respond to an endangered species listing. Pacific Northwest salmon are an icon for our citizens. I'm a local watershed coordinator, and as I work with people over the years, I find remarkable common ground. Young and old, rich and poor, urban and rural, men and women, black and white, Democrat and Republican. These divisions dissolve when we talk about salmon and fishing and clean water. Given our tendency to polarize around issues, perhaps it is the salmon who are saving us. In Oregon, we are not spending time in court fighting or litigating. Instead, we are rolling up our sleeves and lining up to restore the creeks and rivers, to educate our young, and to protect our drinking water. As we stand on the brink of a new century, we dip our cups into the stream of an old and wise tradition, expressed by the framers of the American Constitution, and back even to the Tao Te Ching from ancient China, where the sage once said, "The best government is nearly invisible. When the leaders are skilled, the people will say, 'We did it by ourselves.'"
Questions? Yes, Ed.
Do you have long-term goals here? That is, how will you know when you've succeeded?
We are in the process of a goal-setting exercise which will engage folks statewide in setting both statewide goals and regional goals. We have some overarching goals, that is the recovery of salmon to sustainable and harvestable levels. What we are now going to do is refine that to some specific numbers at a statewide scale, and then at a regional scale, and then ultimately down to an individual watershed scale.
$32 million budget or about. Could you give us some idea of what that money is spent on?
In the 1997-99 biennium, of the $32 million, $20 million was in a grant fund which was available to landowners, watershed councils, soil and water conservation districts, agencies, individuals, citizens to conduct watershed assessment, monitoring, restoration projects, outreach and education, watershed council support to support the staffing needed for those efforts. And the other $12 million was for new state agency programs and staffing and resources to meet their commitments under the Oregon Plan.
You spoke of the applicability of the process in which you've engaged to Washington. You mentioned Washington State, you mentioned California. Could you talk a little bit about the applicability to other types of conservation or perhaps other types of activities?
Yeah, I think that the principles that we used in developing the Oregon Plan apply not just to other natural resource issues, but universally to issues across the board. That is, we took a philosophy of collaboration rather than confrontation, that we needed to have some global goals but locally based solutions. So I think it applies not just to other natural resource issues, but well beyond that to educational issues, health issues, social issues, economic issues. And it's a part of what's now called the En Libra principles, which have been adopted by the Western Governors Association. And Governor Kitzhaber was very involved directly with Governor Leavitt from Utah in helping to bring those principles forward. And it really they were the principles upon which the Oregon Plan was founded.
Those principles were called what?
The En Libra, which is a new word created by Governor Leavitt, which loosely translated means in balance.
In your application, one of the difficulties you pointed out was that some of the factors affecting salmon stocks are out of the state's control. For example, ocean fisheries that are under the control of other states or nations. And the most interesting one, the fact that seals and sea lions, I guess, eat salmon by the hundreds of thousands, and they're protected by the Marine Mammal Protection Act. Is the state doing anything to try to change those factors that are outside of its direct control?
First of all, we do participate in some of the decisions that are made on the ocean fisheries through the Pacific Fisheries Management Council and other bodies in the West Coast that establish those fisheries. So we have some role, although we need to work with our partner states in doing that. And I think the states on the West Coast are universally committed to this effort to recover salmon, and so we have been working to adjust those fisheries fairly significant over the last couple of years in an attempt to rest these populations for a while. So I think in that respect we are making some headway.
How would you describe your key innovation?
I think the key innovation was getting multiple agencies. We have a dozen federal agencies and about a dozen state agencies working together. Many of those agencies have conflicting overall missions in life, and getting those folks working together and working directly with their stakeholder groups who often have different vested interests was a key innovation. And we have in Oregon a system of citizen boards and commissions who hire their own state agency directors. The directors do not report to the governor for the most part. So bringing those agencies together into this collaborative process, I think, was the key innovation.